Telekinesis. The claim of moving an object without physical contact, using only the mind. For some, this is a hidden door to human potential. For others, it's merely a clever illusion and a sum of misunderstandings. Welcome to Polymath's journal, where we explore the boundaries of reality. So, when was the idea of telekinesis born? Who brought this subject to the forefront? What developments occurred, and what is the scientific picture of this phenomenon today? In this video, we will walk the line between legend and the laboratory. Let's start with the birth of the concept. The word telekinesis, in its modern sense, emerged towards the end of the 19th century. Around the 1890s, it began to be used to describe the idea of distant movement. This was an era rife with spiritualist séances and claims of physical phenomena. People believed that tables moved in dark rooms, objects shifted places, and an invisible influence roamed the environment. At this point, there is an important distinction to make. Telekinesis usually evokes the claim of visible object movement. Psychokinesis, a broader term, encompasses the idea that mental influence can manifest not only on large objects but also on small, statistical events like dice rolls. By the turn of the century, the telekinesis debate split into two. One side described one-on-one events through séances and shows. The other side asked, can we measure this in a controlled environment? This question is critical. Because in séance environments, there is a problem: no control. No repetition. Too many external factors. And most importantly, open to fraud. Precisely for this reason, starting from the early 1880s, research societies were established to examine paranormal claims more systematically. However, claims like telekinesis faced two major problems from the start. First, most events could not be repeated in a controlled manner. Second, the environment was very suitable for trickery. Now, let's reach a turning point. In the 1930s, researchers wanted to take telekinesis out of the "did the table move?" debate and into the laboratory. The approach that stood out in this period was, instead of moving large objects, let's choose a small but measurable target. This is where dice experiments came into play. The logic was simple. If the mind can affect matter, can it create a deviation, however small, in a system expected to be random over many trials? This approach changed the narrative of telekinesis. The goal was no longer a pen flying on camera, but a tiny statistical difference emerging over hundreds of thousands of trials. But this gave birth to a new problem: if the effects are so small, the margin for error becomes huge. Let's jump to the 1970s. Because in these years, telekinesis exploded in pop culture. Spoon bending on TV shows, bending keys, mind power demonstrations on metal. One of the most well-known figures of this era was Uri Geller. Figures like Geller planted this question in the minds of millions: are they really doing it? In the same period, some researchers and magicians, well-versed in stage illusions, explained that such shows could also be performed with tricks. This period hardened the telekinesis debate. One side said, "I saw it, it happened." The other side said, "What you saw was not controlled." And here, the biggest paradox of telekinesis emerges. If a real power is in question, why doesn't it work under all conditions? Why can't independent teams reliably repeat the same result? Now, let's return to the lab side. From the 1970s onwards, some research turned to an area that could be called micro-telekinesis. The claim that the mind can cause tiny deviations in systems generating electronic randomness. Studies with random number generators, RNG, stand out in this field. One of the institutions that worked on this line for many years was a research lab established at Princeton. So, what was the result? The picture here is not clear. Some analyses reported deviations that were very small but statistically significant. But there is also strong criticism regarding publication bias and reproducibility issues. In short, there may seem to be a signal, but is the source of the signal really the mind, or biases in the research processes? Today, When telekinesis is mentioned, the general approach of the scientific world is within this framework. There is no reliable, reproducible, and independently verified evidence for the claim of visible, large object movement. At the micro level, although claims of very small effects come up from time to time, a strong consensus has not formed either. The telekinesis debate gets stuck right here: reproducibility. Now let's ask this question: if telekinesis were real, how would we see its trace in the world? If a human could truly affect matter with their mind, its reflection on technology, industry, security, and the economy would be inevitable. Because such an effect would mean a measurable and usable power, not just a show. However, to date, the claim of telekinesis does not seem to have left inevitable traces on a large scale. This makes telekinesis a highly watched subject, standing right in the middle of humanity's appetite for the unknown and science's standard of evidence. In closing, I can say this: telekinesis has taken on three different identities throughout history. The physical phenomenon of séances, the laboratory's search for statistical deviation, and the stage's greatest miracle show. At the point we have reached today, there is no solid evidence for large and clear telekinesis claims. Now, a question for you. If telekinesis were real, where would it first appear? In a laboratory, in front of everyone, in a reproducible experiment? Or in everyday life, as a trace too big to hide?